What's happening, team? Welcome back to Tell Your Story. It is, let's see, what's the day? Today's 29th, and we have not been back for a live session for a little while because the honest truth is we're getting pretty busy around here. Corey and I have been doing a lot in recovery and a lot with work and other things, so it's been kind of tough keeping our schedules together and then making these scheduled out. So she and I are probably going to end up doing a couple of these at a different date. I haven't decided what day would be best to go live, but I think the Fridays they seem to be kind of difficult because every time we get ready to go live, I have something to do. So she's hiding, by the way. She's been doing that all day. I don't know what's going on. Just so you know, there she is. She's in the corner because that's what she does. Anyway, I took photos of her earlier, and she's like, "What do I do with my hands?" I don't know. Again, welcome back to Tell Your Story. So here we talk about addiction and recovery, and we do interviews with real people that have recovered from their addiction and are finding ways to stay sober in their daily lives and things like that. Most of these videos I like to do based on real events that are happening in our lives. And right now in Columbus, Mississippi, where we are, there are a lot of people going through apparently pain. Pain comes in waves. When one person feels it, somebody else is going through it. And today, in particular, we had a friend that we lost, or an acquaintance, I guess. You know, I knew him really well. And it's somebody that we lost with addiction. You know, we come from a background, Corey and I both have been in an addiction of some kind, mine with alcohol, hers was of other drugs. And, you know, the thing that they don't tell you in recovery is that you got to watch while you're getting sober, you've got to watch other people fail. And we do not delight in the pain of others. So we watch our friends, you know, maybe relapse. We've watched good friends of ours get put under the ground because of their addiction. And then friends of ours reach out and tell us about maybe family members of theirs that are currently, you know, maybe in the ICU and things like that. Gosh, these things come in waves, and you just can't prepare, you know, for loss, and you can't prepare for the emotional baggage that comes with that. And when you're getting sober, that's the whole point of getting sober, right? Is to feel again, which is a tough thing, and how to deal with that can be something. It's not something that really can be taught. I do think that there's a process for grieving, which we may go into, but you know, in the short term, it's life happens, and when it does, it doesn't prepare you to take on its difficulties. So I did come in with notes. I do take notes / maybe I just look things up on Google and hope that they work best with the video. That does happen. If there's anybody out there, you know, that is watching, I see one right now, that has something going on in their life that knows of anyone that's in pain, you know, let us know. We would love to be with you in that and support you in whatever way we can. So I looked up some stuff for this video, and one in particular was, what is grief? Because I just know that we have a lot of friends right now that are in pain, you know, that are dealing with family members and others that are suffering. And suffering is a real thing. People go through that every day. And it's not just in addiction, but other forms of pain. And so here at helpguide.com, it's one of my favorite places to look up different types of maybe mental issues. They do have subjects catering to all kinds of different addictions and, you know, things like suicide and bulimia and all kinds of different stuff. But on this one, they're talking about grief. Grief is a natural response to loss. It's the emotional suffering you feel when something or someone you love is taken away. Often the pain of loss can feel overwhelming. So that's their definition of what grief actually is. They talk about different ways to process grief. We all have different coping mechanisms for certain things. One of my favorite coping mechanisms is humor. I like to deflect things. That's something that I just do naturally. I think maybe I watched too many cartoons as a kid, or maybe I just love attention. But one of the ways that I like to get away from things that I don't want to think about, and it's not always something that I do on purpose. It's become habit over time, as I tend to deflect with a joke or by changing a subject. Corey makes fun of me a lot because I change the subject when there are things I don't want to talk about, or maybe when I think I'm funny. So I do that a lot. Inevitably, the grieving process takes time. Healing happens gradually. It can't be forced or hurried. And there's no normal timetable for grieving. So, if you've ever had somebody tell you you haven't grieved yet, I think that's kind of a wasted statement, because you don't know how to grieve. There's not a plan in line for how to get rid of pain, or how to push it aside or let it go. Here are a couple of myths and facts. Let me give you a myth. Myth number one: the pain will go away faster if you ignore it. I don't know if that's a given for you, but it sure wasn't for me when I was drinking. I always felt like if I drank a bunch of alcohol, I could, I guess, numb the world around me, and that would push everything away, because I felt good as soon as I had a beer. That's not exactly how pain works. Eventually it bottles up. And when people say bottle up, they just mean you get nervous, right? When the brain puts out certain chemicals that make you nervous, that stuff just grinds and grinds and grinds until you explode. Your emotions take over and you do something stupid. Myth number two: it's important to be strong in the face of loss. Corey and I were watching something the other day. This guy said, I think it's Bill Burr is the comedian. I love Bill Burr because he just says everything that comes out of his head. And he was saying something like, this guy was super afraid, and he's like, be a man, shove your feelings down and pretend that you have answers. Yeah. Well, sometimes as a guy, that can be a tough thing, because in my life and in the other lives of men, we are supposed to be, the face of the place, the strong ones, not supposed to be emotional. As it turns out, I'm very emotional. I can watch a musical and cry at a chair. Corey and I sit together and watch sad movies, and I'm over in the corner making sure she's not watching, but I'm like, that's how I do things. Myth number three. Is that three? Three. If you don't cry, it means you aren't sorry about the loss. That's not true. In fact, crying is a normal response to sadness, but it's not the only one. Those who don't cry may feel the pain just as deeply as others. Sometimes I think those that don't cry feel the pain deeper than the ones that do. Because the total honest, if you're anything like me, in order to deal with pain, I put on a face, right? And it's the facade that scares me more than the people that actually show the emotion. Because those that are showing the emotion have this key in their lives called communication. And communication is a very tough thing to do for myself, especially for Corey. She's nuts. And then, let's see. She's looking at me like, you're sleeping outside tonight. The fourth myth, number 4. Moving on with your life means forgetting about your loss. So people say put things behind you, forget those things. That's not really what happens. Moving on means you've accepted your loss, but that's not the same as forgetting. You can move on with your life and keep the memory of someone or something you lost as an important part of you. In fact, as we move through life, these memories can become more and more integral to defining the people we are. Now, one thing they didn't say in that article was that actual memories change over time. Your perception of a memory is not going to be the same now as it is 10 years from here, because memories fade. Your memory is actually just a copy of what you saw. And the more you download it, the fuzzier it gets, or the things you change about it. You could tell yourself something 1,000 times, and if it seems correct to you, eventually somewhere down the line, you're just going to believe that. And I know that because I was bringing up a story with my dad one time about something in my childhood. We had gone to like a state park, and I saw this tree, and something about it, I saw something in my head that said it was drawn in a Disney movie or something. I must have brought it up as a kid, and for some reason that imprinted in my brain, but that was not true at all. Like, it had nothing to do with the situation. Anyway, yeah, things change over time. So that's been kind of our week. We've dealt with, we actually went back to our first recovery meeting yesterday. There's still, COVID-19, you can only have 10 people per room. Eventually that will lead to 20 after June 1st. But we've gotten to see some faces of the people that are around us. People have changed. It's funny because you remember that people are getting stuck in their homes, or they're not leaving in fear of, catching this, is it a disease? Is it this virus, the COVID-19. So like a lot of people have gotten fat. I'm pretty fat. Like my face is blown up just a little bit. So, excuse the facial hair too, because, sometimes I sprout like a chia pet. I'm sort of patchy in different areas. That's just the way it goes. Corey has just gotten prettier. It happens. They say that women age like fine wine, men age like milk. Welcome to my life. But anyway, a couple of things that are coming up real soon. I've got some ideas for some videos that I'm going to put out there about loss, because that seems to be the foregoing theme of this week. But also, I've got some things about. I took down some notes of these videos I wanted to do. Maybe I put them in my other phone. I have two phones right now. One because I wanted a new phone, and two because my work tends to destroy the things that I own. I've gone through a lot of headphones in my closet. All right. So the first one, I put this as a title in, I think, my Instagram story that said Q&A about videos coming up. If anybody had any ideas on videos that they'd like to watch, I'd love to hear it. How to stop caring about what people think about you. And that's a long title, so I'll probably change it to like how to stop giving a fuck or something like that. Second one, dealing with toxic people. That is going to be a huge one, because in sobriety, one of my number one rules is stepping away from people that are toxic. Friends, even family, that are going to bring you down when you're trying to get, to that next level of recovery. It's a must. So that's going to be a great one. And then how to love yourself. Because you can't love anybody else if you can't love you, right? So those are three ideas I had. I think I'm going to pitch those eventually, and enjoy that. I guess getting back to topic, because, when I go off on a tangent, I get away from the topics that I'm thinking about here. I talked about the loss. We had a friend that passed. I think that loss is a tough thing, and it certainly doesn't help in 2020 when COVID-19 has taken over the lives of hundreds of thousands of people in the United States. Job loss, things like that. Coping mechanisms. I mentioned that earlier. And one of mine is humor. Something that I like to do is push things away via, putting up a wall. Do you have coping mechanisms? Because I can't think of another.
Just like sometimes sitting down or just like reading a book, getting
away
from what's in my head, so I immerse myself into something else.
So having a hobby, so maybe reading, it's not just a coping mechanism, but it's a way to grieve, right? Trying to get out of yourself. So you read. That's your coping mechanism. So every time we're in the living room and I'm watching a movie and I'm like, I like to lay down here and I'm like this, and I look up at her because I want her to pay attention. And this is her in a book. She didn't like to look at her. She was like, what is he doing? Yeah, that kind of thing. Okay, so reading is a way to ignore and a way to cope with the things that you're...
Not everything's about you, sweetheart.
I might be selfish. I'm just saying. That. I think another coping mechanism, let's see. Yeah, maybe even to isolate.
That's unhealthy.
It's
to a degree.
Unhealthy coping mechanism, but a lot of people do that. What else?
Another one is, even things like kayaking.
Okay, so you're thinking of like hobbies and things that you could do
right.
to get out there and be healthy. Okay.
Because most of the coping mechanisms that I've had for a long time are very unhealthy.
Sure.
So the best thing that I know how to do today is to do something to distract myself from whatever I'm thinking in my head.
It makes total sense. So We kayak a lot. In fact, we spend a lot of time on the water. Something about being outdoors, has a very freeing thing on the mind. And I mentioned isolation. Obviously, that's not the healthiest thing to do. But let's say being alone isn't always the worst thing. If you feel like you're backed into a corner and you need to separate yourself from whatever's giving you anxiety, step outside. Find your way to what might be a lake or park or a really pretty bamboo garden area that's in the back of your apartment complex. We have one of those. And just take a breath. If you're a big fan of the Karate Kid, he used to breathing, right? Because it's the source. You return to breathing. Great way to get out of stress. Meditation. We have this friend, Nathan, who is a huge believer in meditation. Finding a center, a quiet place, not necessarily to, just astral project. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about just sitting and being very present, and the basics of meditation usually are trying to learn to become present and in the moment, be right now, stop getting stuck in your brain. Because, a lot of times that's what happens when you are dealing with stress, when you're so angry, and when you're dealing with things going on in your life. I'm messing with Corey. It's not an inside joke. It's just me being a dick. But meditation, meditation, a great way to get out of your stress and your dealings. Let's see. I had something else I wanted to mention about stress, because really, when dealing with grief and death, recovery is a lot about that. I mentioned, the title of this is Death and Addiction. And we've talked about the coping mechanisms, a little bit of the emotional aspect, and then I kind of slid and said that, they don't tell you that in addiction, you watch other people fail. Yeah. So part of our recovery is that coming back, we have to feel all of these emotions. It's almost as if, after we've decided to push our brain, out of our head and put it over here, we get rid of all of those numbing effects, and that brain just slides right back in, and we feel everything. And it's like going through puberty. Like, you just don't know how to handle what the hell's going on in your head. You're happy one day, you're sad the next, and that can be really tough, And then it sure doesn't help that while you're trying to battle getting rid of all this craziness in your life, other people are failing, and it's a choice. Remember that, if you are battling in the sobriety realm, other people are going to make choices that don't make sense to you. I don't have a lot of patience for stupidity, but then again, who am I to talk? Because I was that guy at one time making the decisions that were stupid, right? So kind of got to give it a shake of the head and be like, oh, well, I was once that sick person too. So in our recovery, we will see people not just fail, but fall and tumble and make mistakes and eventually even put themselves underground. And
that's tough because,
yeah,
I just want to run out, save people, but at the same time, I just want to grab them and
Sure.
shake the shit out of them and be like, just stop what you're doing. But I know that if I have that I can save you mentality, I'm
Sure.
enabling the shit out of you. If I try to shake the shit out of you, it's just going to make you go further down. So trying to find that balance of knowing where and when you can help is really tough.
Okay, that was a good point. So I had somebody once tell me that you get numb to the things that happen to other people in sobriety, and I think that was one of the dumbest things I ever heard. You find a balance between the ways you can help and the ways you can't, and that means going back and forth. It doesn't mean that she and I are going to go out there and just invite all the troubled people into our home. Yeah, we don't allow anybody in our home because we keep a separation between church and state. Our home is where we feel safe. That's our safe ground. We don't have to, that can be controlled. Now, I get it. It's not all about control, but for us, this is our safe place. We have to have a separation between the world and us, everything that is us, the cat, the TV, and this YouTube channel. So, but having a separation, knowing the difference between what is not right and wrong, but what is acceptable and unacceptable. And we don't think that we'll ever be numb to the things that are going on with friends and family. We just have a better understanding of what works and doesn't for coping and for helping. And that's something that you have to find too if you're in that situation. I heard a story the other day of a friend that was on the phone with a guy, and his friend had friend of friend of friend, right? Well, somebody had passed away and they were just crying and crying and crying. And he was just taken aback by how emotional he was and didn't know how to help. Well, sometimes the best thing you can do is not say that you understand, not take on the burdens of that person, but just say, yeah, I hear you. Because someone who listens usually is someone who's helping. So you're not here to save everybody. That's impossible. But you can help someone along the way. That's what's important. Yeah, that was the tangent. That's kind of all I really had to share. I think I wanted to go live again because we hadn't been live in a couple of weeks, and it's just because we're super busy. I think our schedule is probably going to change. I may end up doing this on Thursdays rather than Fridays because the weekends hit up, and she and I make plans all the time to go out on weekends, and we also make plans to drive everywhere. And I have been trying this Facebook Live thing, but every time we drive somewhere, we go into bumfuck Egypt, and I can't get a signal. So people are like, I can't hear you, and all this craziness. So we've got a couple videos we're going to put out. I enjoyed going live tonight. Not a lot of action going on, but that's okay. I appreciate your time here. I always appreciate those who get to watch our channel and see the cool stories. If you did get a chance, Corey told a really great story recently on our last video. And a couple others have put some testimonies out there about sobriety that's really awesome. So we got some playlists that are fun to look at. Check those out. If you get a chance, like, comment, subscribe, all of that jazz, because it helps me with the algorithm. I appreciate you. I love you. And we'll see you.